Episode 20. Kate and I discuss Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4, The Spoils of War. Hello, Kate.
Hi.
So that was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, another good one. I enjoyed that.
2 in a row with not too much to complain about. So, let's see. Picks up with the Lannisters, Jaime and Bronn, and Bronn complaining about how he doesn't have his own castle yet. I couldn't help but wonder if they were laying some seeds of a possible betrayal of some sort from Bronn. That's by the time he was saving Jaime's ass at the end, I was going back on that. But they have Cersei's promising Euron.
You're assuming it was Bronn. I think it was Bronn as well, but there's a chance that it was that Tarly Dickon. Yeah. No, it must have been Bronn because he was looking at the white horse, and then there was 2 white horses that got toasted. Oh, okay.
But anyway, so Cersei's promising Euron, like stringing him along a little bit about marriage after the war is over, and Bronn's being promised this castle, and there was a little bit of discontentment. So I was wondering if they're laying some seeds for betrayal, but maybe not. Do you have any thoughts on that conversation or anything?
I mean, I was thinking about it, especially at the end there where Tyrion's looking there, and he and Bronn are so close in physical proximity, and it's been a long time since they have. Since he escaped King's Landing. And
it wasn't clear to me if Tyrion could actually see Bronn.
No, he saw Jaime. I don't think he saw Bronn. But, it's just one of those things where, it was just, they were so close, they got along so well, and I was just kind of thinking about their relationship, and here they are on opposing sides, and yet they're not really opposing each other, and how that all worked out. And so, Bronn has always been the guy, whoever is going to get me what I want, I'm on their side. Yeah. And so I think they are setting up the stage here where he's like, I keep asking for a castle, you keep promising me a castle, and you're not giving it to me. So I do think that there is maybe a precedent that if Dany's like, hey, I'll give you a castle. Although it is kind of funny for me with Bronn because he seems like one of those, like if he's not fighting, and what's he going to do? Just sit in a castle?
Yeah, pretty much. He's moving up the ladder. Well, I feel like they're also laying the seeds for possible Tyrion betrayal as well. I thought there was a couple of hints. Tyrion looked highly dissatisfied at what was happening, and
he looked really unhappy. But he's basically watching all the people that he grew up with and their families get roasted alive.
Right, and as Daenerys gets possibly more and more ruthless, we'll see. It could have just been that they were having Bronn fill the time with a conversation, or maybe they're laying multiple seeds for betrayal across the series.
Do you disagree with what Dany did?
Not really. Everything Tyrion has planned out has failed. And it was a relatively soft target, I think.
I mean, but how is it any different than what the Lannisters just did to the Tyrells?
Right. It's I don't necessarily disagree with it, except that I was rooting against Dany. Are we going to skip to the battle right now? Should we just get to that? Or do you want to go through the episode in chronological order?
You just said that Dany got more ruthless, and I know you're not a Dany fan, so I was just jumping on.
Well, I don't think she's particularly gotten more ruthless yet, but I think that they're making her more ruthless. And what kicked off this conversation is Bronn going to turn cloak, and is Tyrion and Varys going to turn cloak? And somebody mentioned to me after last week, is there already maybe a traitor in Dany's camp, and that's why all Tyrion's plans aren't working out? I think Dany was correct to question his loyalty about, it's his family that they're attacking and stuff.
And underestimating.
Right. So
Tyrion's supposed to be the really clever one out of those 3, and yet, Cersei and Jaime have actually proven to be quite clever.
Right. Is it even possible that Tyrion is working against Dany, which it seems highly unlikely, but it's awful convenient that everything's worked out the way it is. But, the show writes inconveniences a lot.
Well, I mean, Cersei also put Tyrion on trial and did all of that to him, saying, oh, he killed Joffrey, he did it, and then Jaime has now found out that actually no, it was Lady Olenna. So there are a lot of seeds of doubt that have been sown here, and in I think a couple episodes, at least for Jaime, where I think Jaime's going to start to question certain things and like, why am I doing this? And he's someone where I think he'll look at the difficulties of war and start to question it now. I think old Jaime wouldn't have. But I think who he's become, he's able to start looking at things, and he would care about how it's done and what's true and what's not. And
yeah, maybe.
I mean, I think he's going to survive this, and think he's going to be taken prisoner again.
Right. The question is, will next episode start with him as Dany's prisoner, or will it start with Bronn fishing him out of the water on the other side of the stream or whatever.
Really, really
safety.
deep stream.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's not get too much into Jamie right now. We'll get to Jamie later. All right. So then we skip past that. We got to King's Landing and the Iron Bank. Cersei got her money at the end of that extremely long wagon line, I guess.
Yeah, and it looks like the Bank of Bravos is good to back her.
Yeah, so they're backing Cersei. That's bad news for Dany. And she said she wanted the Golden Company, which is a mercenary group. I guess just to reinforce her army. Is that how you took it?
Yeah, I mean, I think she just doesn't have that many men, and she needs more armies. I think she wants to become a really big force, and she recognizes that she isn't that big, and so she needs to start.
You know what I always wondered is all the sellswords that Stannis hired. I can't remember if they were the Golden Company or some other company. Are they just running around Westeros? The 5,000 men that abandoned him? You know, they've been written out, obviously, but I always thought that was a glaring plot hole.
I think they join up somewhere else. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying about Bronn, is I think there's a certain type warrior. A lot of them are knights, a lot of them are whatever, but like they fight. That's what they do. And
well, I'm just saying that there's a whole mercenary company in Westeros that the writers are just...
I don't know if they're necessarily still a company. I think a bunch of people just left. And maybe they... Like, I think this is how new companies are formed, or, you know, this person goes this way, that person goes that way. I could see them deciding to go wherever they want to. Maybe a bunch of them go back over to Essos, you know, so... Yeah. There's
not too much to say about Cersei or the Iron Bank, I don't think, except that she's being backed, so good for her.
They seem to like her pretty quick, which I find a little bit interesting. I mean, maybe they just say things to appease people, but I think they would be a little bit more circumspect about who they back.
Well, their reasoning was solid. I mean, she got the money right away.
But she was also someone who refused to pay when it suited her to do so. So. Yeah,
the banker did mention that they grew accustomed to her interests, so there seems to be a little inconsistency there.
And, I mean, they must really not like Dany then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of times the Bank of Bravos chooses who is going to ensure they get their money back. And so that's why they're willing to back Stannis or whoever as long as they got their money back. Well, now they got their money back, so I kind of think that they should be neutral parties and not really care. We're here, they're kind of throwing in with Cersei, so...
Well, I think that last episode they kind of established that Dany, by destroying the slave trade and everything, cost them a lot of money.
Right,
and there's no reason to think that she would be good for them in general. We've never really heard the history of the Targaryens and the Iron Bank.
But I just find it funny, like, again, Cersei's got a few big harpoons, and then that's going to be against dragons, and unless technology and physics has really advanced since dragons have existed, like, dragons completely dominated. Whoever had dragons won. That's why the Targaryens became what they did, and I just find it so interesting that all of a sudden, like, those harpoon things are really going to be a match for the dragons.
So I actually think they're not new. I read something that during the Dance of the Dragons, which was the Targaryen Civil War, many dragons were killed, I think by something like that. I'd have to look a little deeper. I can Google that to confirm.
Okay.
But it, as far as we know in the show, it's brand new, but there was something... I think that's not unprecedented. Okay.
But the one thing I'll offer with what you were just talking about is it was also dragons versus dragons.
Right.
My point is whenever anytime you have dragons versus no dragons, dragons are going to win.
Yeah. So far.
I keep wanting to jump ahead to the
we'll get to the battle. I know. I keep wanting
I almost did it again. I mean, it was so cool.
Let's just quickly go through the other parts. So the next thing we got was Bran and Littlefinger.
So now, actually, part of my kind of criticism from last week of like, okay, Bran's all serious now. If they had just had the Mirror Bran scene that you had in this episode before we saw Serious Bran last episode, I take back all my criticisms. I fully accept the explanation. That's an editing criticism, I think.
Yeah, his transition was much more logical this episode.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
And they explain it.
Memory of Bran is fading away. He's becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, whatever.
It's not that I think his memory of Bran has faded away. It's that his identity of Bran isn't his sole identity anymore. He acknowledges, yep, I can remember it. It's kind of there, but I have too many other memories now. His identity now is the Three-Eyed Raven, which is someone who just knows way too much about way too much.
So it's unclear to me exactly how much he knows. So correct me if I'm wrong, that the Three-Eyed Raven has to see through birds or the weirwood trees. The weirwood trees are the trees with the faces on them that he's always sitting by at Winterfell, right? So
yeah, wherever there's a weirwood, he's privy to what's around, but it must also be, I think, what you're saying, like the Ravens, because the only way that he could know about Jon Snow is he's up in that room.
Right. Yeah, so it's weird. So he said the chaos is the ladder, which is there's no weirwood trees where that was said, which is in King's Landing. There's no ravens, so he appears to be omnipresent. Would that be the word?
Omniscient,
omnipresent, whatever. But when he said, where'd you get the dagger? Or when they had the conversation about the dagger, Bran said somebody who's really rich or something. So does Bran know that Littlefinger, or whoever, it was Littlefinger, right, that sent the assassin?
I think he's got Littlefinger's number, for sure. I mean, there were a lot of looks going on regarding Littlefinger in this episode. And there was definitely
Well, I just don't know if Bran can see like God, or does he have to see through some medium?
I think he has to see through some medium.
At least in the books, that is the case as far as I understand it. It's all kind of vague to me, but in the show, it's unclear. Yeah, we just Googled it, and it wasn't particularly helpful whether Bran needs to see through some medium or if he just has
green sight,
which is visions.
Yeah.
But from the preview for next episode, it looks like he sees the army of the Whites coming through the sight of ravens, so for whatever that's worth.
But that could be just warg ability.
Right. So it's not clear how much he knows, but all right. So Arya makes it to Winterfell.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm always happy to see something like that. I enjoy the Starks and Homecoming and things like that, and I just couldn't help but think the way things were the last time all these kids last saw each other. You know, Sansa and Arya did not get along at all, and that's kind of how they last parted. And I thought the Homecoming could have been a little bit better. For some reason I was more excited, and then I was like, oh, okay.
Well, one thing I liked that they did is when they first met in the crypts, they hugged, and it wasn't a very emotional hug for Arya, but then they talked some more, and then they hugged again, and emotional Arya showed up. So we see that coldness in the last episode isn't a permanent feature of hers. She's still got some humanity.
Yeah, it is interesting. You do experience that there's still some distance between her and Sansa.
Yeah, they were never the closest, but
I did like, though, that she went straight somewhere that was meaningful to her over, hey, everybody. Like, I thought that fit Arya's character. And right away, Sansa knew where she was.
Yeah.
To the credit of the stonemason, I thought that looked a lot like Eddard Stark.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good, too.
I didn't know him, though, so...
And then Arya does some sparring with Brienne. Her name is actually Brienne, but everyone says Brienne. But in the books, at least, it's Brienne.
Okay.
But I think Brienne's easier to say. So maybe it's because I'm a martial artist, but I didn't really like that she could hang with Brienne. But what are you going to do? It doesn't surprise me. It's a fantasy book and whatever. And they had a double kill. They fought to a draw in this little sparring session. It's a little much for me, but what do you think?
Yeah, you might be more picky on it than me. I think Arya is really good now. The training she got with the faceless men and no one, she's really good. And Syria Farrell trained with that type of sword, and he was an amazing swordsman, and he said that you could do a lot of damage with that if you knew how to use it. And so, the whole precedent of being good like that was already set in season 1. I don't know. I can buy it. I think Arya is a badass now. I liked that here are two individuals that have a lot in common. These are two girls cut from the same cloth, or two women cut from the same cloth, and I enjoyed that they were able to experience that together.
Yeah, if Brienne wasn't such a strategic person, she could have been overseeing Arya for the last year. But she had to jump the gun against the Hound and make a big fight out of it.
But that's what Brienne knows how to do.
Yeah.
I mean, Brienne, she stuck to her characterization, which I like. That she did what she thought was best, and it was Arya who kind of threw a wrench in it all. Like, who could have ever foreseen that Arya and the Hound would become buddies? What I found interesting, though, is they're definitely setting something up with Sansa against her siblings.
Yeah, so the most important part of that whole scene was the appearance of Sansa's possible jealousy or insecurities involving Brienne not being solely beholden to her, and Littlefinger seemed to get a kick out of this too. So,
how much do you think that's Littlefinger's influence, and how much do you think that's how Sansa really feels?
It's hard to say. I guess Littlefinger's going to be constantly there to stir the pot. If he notices any opening, he'll be there to make a bigger wedge in it. So, but that was the main thing I think that this whole scene was trying to get across to us, is that Sansa's got some deep insecurities going on of this power dynamic with the family.
I could understand the stuff she has towards Jon, but why Arya?
Yeah.
Does she think that other people would want to follow other people than her? Like, I don't really get, where is this coming from? I don't get it. I don't like it. It's more of me like, oh God, okay.
They're definitely building some kind of conflict there, but it's hard for me to see it right now.
I'm just having a hard time accepting it because I think a lot of what they went through, the Stark children, is unifying rather it being divisive. And Sansa goes out of their way by saying, hey, this is Littlefinger, this is how he works and how it goes. Just because she hangs out with him, I don't think that's enough to just turn her over to this way of thinking in life.
Well, Littlefinger, yeah, he didn't even do anything. It was her. He just watched her responses.
Yeah, he was there. And that's why I'm just wondering if his general influence, is that causing some of the shift in her? And I'm saying I don't buy it if it is, but I don't know. I think that she would have been much more aligned, like blood is thicker than water kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, so let's quickly go to Dragonstone.
Lots of dragon glass.
Yeah, lots of dragon glass, some writing on the walls, and
Dany seems to be convinced that there's those White Walkers.
Yeah, so Dany seems to accept that there's White Walkers, but she still wants Jon to bend the knee. And this whole conversation reminded me of Stannis and Mance Rayder, and I think they're really trying to show that Jon is Mance Rayder-ish, Wilding-ish, won't bend the knee. I would be very reluctant to bend the knee if I were him too, but I would also... It's really kind of just like with Stannis and Mance. It's just a pride thing, like she said.
Do you think that's pride? I don't see... This is where I feel like people misunderstood Mance, or the Southerners misunderstood Mance. And in the show here today, I don't think it's pride for Jon. I think it's the fact that if you look throughout history, when certain types of people rule other types of people, a lot of times certain people get the shaft. And I think, the wildlings often were not ruled well if they...
Well, so I thought Stannis' offer to Mance was perfectly reasonable. You can have lands and farms and everything. You just got to fight in my army. And I think that Dany said, I'll take my dragons to fight these White Walkers. You just got to bend the knee.
Right. I mean, and I could ultimately see Jon doing that so that people can survive rather not survive. But I think what he's trying to tell them is that at this point, they can't be ruled. So even if I do this, it won't work anymore. That they're so tired of Southern people trying to rule them.
Yeah, that's what he said. I don't know if I...
And her comeback was, if they see their king do this, they will. Which is, I mean, I don't know. That's what kings of the North in the past did.
It's not like there's not a long history of that being the case.
But there also wasn't this history of the Northerners being brutally attacked and houses wiped out by Southern kings.
Well, that was the thing too. That hasn't happened in the show.
Well, what happened to the Starks?
Right. So the Starks,
first with the Targaryen
not by
king.
Southerners.
Well, the Targaryen king and what he did.
Well, sure, yeah.
And then with Joffrey as the king to Ned. I mean, basically, we have 2 generations in a row where the heads of households were killed in a way that the North definitely did not agree with.
Right. I think if you look at the average Northern household, though, it was Ramsay and the Boltons that were maybe the bad guys, and there are other Northerners. But yeah, I get it that for the Starks, yeah, they went to King's Landing twice and got killed twice. I don't know what Jon should do. I don't know if he should bend the knee or not, but if he's got 3 dragons at his disposal and all he's got to do is bend the knee or at least swear fealty or something, it's got to be tempting because his whole shtick is to protect from the White Walkers,
Right. I do think that they're setting something up. Exactly what, I'm not sure, but I thought that was a very intimate conversation in the cave. It's only the 2 of them in there. There's nobody else there.
He did touch her arm, too.
And their body language and way. Yeah. It was a very intimate conversation. And they could have had other people present. They could have had it be much more angry. But no, they were really talking. And
there's just so few episodes left. We have 3 left this season. Yeah. I don't see how they can develop any kind of romance.
Well, I'm almost wondering, though, if she's starting to take to him a little more, and just with the way things being what they are, that maybe she's going to let him ride one of her dragons.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that might maybe happen.
Well... Yeah, possibly.
And maybe that's what they're setting the stage for. Like, hey, you're cool. You can ride one of my dragons.
Well, I was proud of Davos for learning something from Stannis, being able to say fewer instead of less or whatever it was. That was a little tribute, I guess.
And they kind of followed up. You called him a creeper last week with Missandei, but it sounds like he did get to know Missandei, and I think it's for the reasons that I said, that he's trying to get to know Daenerys' council.
Yeah, somebody asked me last week, is it possible that Missandei's a traitor to Dany? And they seem to be questioning her along those lines, but I don't see any motivation for it. Or plus her little romance with Grey Worm makes it just doesn't make sense.
We haven't talked about this in a while, though. The Dany's 3 betrayals are who?
From the books.
It's Miramaz Dewar.
Well, we don't know. So she's, per prophecy, going to be betrayed 3 times. So the prophecy says, 3 treasons you will know, 1 for blood, and 1 for gold, and 1 for love. So this is a prophecy that happened in the books for Dany, and it's unclear which one she's already experienced, if any. She was betrayed by Miramaz Dora, who was the witch who did the blood magic to get Khal Drogo all screwed up.
Yeah.
And that might have been a betrayal for blood. She is unsure if she was betrayed by Jorah or not.
For gold or for love?
It would be for love, I guess. Not for gold.
But he didn't betray her for love at the time.
Right.
He betrayed her for gold.
No, he betrayed her to be able to go home.
Right.
For a pension? What's it called?
A pardon.
A pardon. He betrayed her for...
I was like, he's going to retire?
Right. But he didn't betray her per se. That's a tough one. She doesn't know if that counts as a betrayal. I don't know if it counts as a betrayal. And in the show, I don't know that we're going to get these 3 prophecies, but if somebody betray her for love, if it's not Jorah, could be Jon. We'll see if that develops. I don't know. So Missandei's probably not one of those traitors.
No. Yeah.
The only other scene we had in Dragonstone was Theon showing up. Not much to say about that. I thought he should have, just if I were directing that scene or writing that scene, I would have Theon's PTSD more strongly in, especially seeing Jon and being scared of what Jon might do. He just seemed like, oh, hey, Jon, I didn't know you were here. That's strange.
In the books, if you looked at Theon, you would see an old man with white hair, with
no
he's
teeth,
missing
half
fingers.
his fingers.
Yeah. He's missing a lot of teeth. I think a bunch of them are cracked. I remember he could barely eat.
Yeah.
In the books, he could basically only have a liquid diet. He is a very, you could tell, a tortured, haggard old man in the books.
Yeah.
And we're here, maybe he's a little skinnier.
Right.
But otherwise, he looks no real worse for wear, and I think it's having a hard time translating across the screen to audiences, and possibly to all the other characters who encounter him, because I think it would really change how some people respond to him if they saw a more beaten down Theon.
Yeah, they're definitely inconsistent with how messed up he is, and I thought they could have had that a little stronger tonight, especially as soon as he saw Jon, he must have known, oh, fuck. And I would have liked to have seen him go into shaky, weird mode right away.
He had a slight, you could see, he looked a little guilty, but I agree, I would want him to get really, really uncomfortable. And
all right, let's go to the battle. That's what everybody wants to talk about.
Me?
So that was exciting. I liked almost everything about it. A couple little things here and there or whatever. As you already mentioned, the water is, 30 feet deep, only 4 feet inland or whatever, but whatever. But it was good. I think one of the best things the show has done is expand Bronn's character. In the book, he's not such a big character. He does have a prominent role, but a lot of what he does, especially in the later books, is off screen. We just hear about this and that and the other thing.
For the record, he wants a castle in the books, too.
Well, he gets some kind of big castle.
Well, lollies.
Yes.
And he's clever. He outwits Cersei.
Yeah, Cersei sends some people to kill him.
Cersei tries to kill him, and he outwits them. He's very clever.
Yeah, he kills all the people Cersei sends, and then he names his son Tyrion to piss off Cersei or whatever.
Yeah, but I also
think he
think
likes Tyrion,
yeah, he's...
But anyway, so that's way different. I like that the show, that actor is just so charming and just such a good casting choice. So he's always fun to watch, and there's almost no way you watch this battle, and since he's a relatively minor character, you never know when he's going to die or not, right?
Right.
So I like that tension. I never felt that Jaime was going to die tonight.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It just wasn't going to happen. But Bronn, you're like, God.
As soon as it started and they came in, they're coming up over the hill and the dragon's coming, Jay goes, I hope they don't kill Bronn.
Yeah. I don't want them to kill Bronn. I didn't want them to kill Randall Tarley because they just introduced us to him and I like him.
What a hard ass.
Yeah, he's a badass for sure.
I said hard ass.
And I didn't want them to kill Dickon. And Dickon had a nice showing for himself. He killed a tough Dothraki, because when Jaime was fighting that Dothraki, I'm like, or gonna fight him, I was like, all right, he already killed like 2 or 3 Dothraki. There's no way he's such a good fighter all of a sudden.
Right.
And then they have what looks like the toughest Dothraki on the field coming at him, and I'm like, how are they gonna get out of this one? And then good old Dickon showed up and saved him. So I like that. And when Dany's flying at Bronn, I gotta guess 80-90% of the viewers were rooting for Bronn there. Maybe not to kill Dany or to kill a dragon, but they did not want Bronn to lose that situation. I personally would have liked to have seen a dragon killed, but
Drogon at this point.
No,
killed?
As soon as she was riding Drogon, I knew it wouldn't happen. But if she,
who else she gonna ride?
Well, she was on one of the other 2.
She's never ridden any of the other 2. And dragons are kind of like, at least in the books they talk about it, they pair up with like one human. I'm
just saying that if she were on a different dragon and the dragon was killed, that would have been a shocking thing. And it would have been interesting. But anyways, I assume that most of the viewers were...
Well, they did a great job then of taking, I think, for a lot of not you, but a lot of the viewers out there, 2 favorites. So then now it's like, well, who do you want? If one's got to go, and neither did here, but...
I mean, even with Bronn out of the picture, I would have been rooting for the Lannisters. It's...
Why?
Maybe it's not just me, or maybe it is just me, I don't know, but Dany's shown up with her dragons and her Dothraki, and...
But she's coming after people who, they just killed her allies. Of course, she would come after them. I don't find that far-fetched or odd or anything. Why is
I don't either. I'm just saying that the show, I bet you viewership sympathies were mixed. I bet they weren't all pro Dany, this is good on the writers. This is good on the show producers. That was one of my favorite things. Probably my favorite episode of all time is the Battle of Blackwater, because we watched that episode before I read the books. And I genuinely did not know who would win or who to root for between Stannis and Tyrion, basically. So this one was not quite the same, but a little similar in that my feelings were a little bit mixed. And I was leaning toward Bronn and Jaime.
Yeah, I don't know. I see the Lannisters being a little bit more... they just completely took out the Tyrell house, and now a bigger shark just came by and is coming to take them out. So It
was spoiled for them. The spoils of war.
Well, I kept being like, don't burn all the food. Everybody needs that. The people that you all want to rule need that food. So, yeah, that was a little hard for me. And, oh, man, that horse scene was really hard for me.
The leg cut off.
Oh, yeah, that.
Well, I like the way the Dothraki fight, which was different than the way the Knights fight. I don't like that the Dothraki necessarily completely outclassed the Knights, but... Given the setting and everything, it made some sense. But I like that...
they caught them off guard. To me, I thought that... I can't remember where we heard this somewhere, but I'm under the impression that a Dothraki and a horse is a force to be reckoned with.
It comes from the books. I remember exactly what it was.
Jorah, I think, explains that...
It was Dany asking Jorah, could these Dothraki really fight?
Yeah.
Against the Knights, and Jorah said that when he first got to Vaes Dothrak or whatever, he thought the Dothraki could not fight with the Knights, that the Knights were too strong and too disciplined in their armor. But the more time he spent with the Dothraki, and the more he saw they fought on horseback shooting their arrows, the more he thought they had a good chance.
Right. And they're the only people, I think, that are able to shoot from horseback, which is also what makes them such a formidable foe. And that's one thing I loved about this episode, is they found people to look like real Dothrakis, to shoot arrows from a horse in full gallop. I loved it. I thought they did a really nice job being accurate with that. I mean, I thought this was a great battle scene for a couple different reasons. One, I love how the Dothraki were portrayed. I mentioned to you, I thought that they seemed to train people how to use their erics and stuff, and I thought that looked pretty cool. I didn't buy when one of the Dothrakis chose to get off his horse to fight on the ground. That didn't make sense to me.
No, I kind of bought it. Just they're wild. They're they got the battle.
I still think that they're best on their horse. It's one thing if you fall off and you got to make do. It's another thing to choose to get down. But here's what I loved also so much about this scene is this is the first time where we've heard all about people fighting with dragons, and we get a little taste of it with Dany and Drogon back in Meereen, but not really. It's just him blowing fire in a bunch of ships. But I wanted to know what it was like in an actual battle on land here.
Yeah, when they had that slightly slow motion scene with the amount of fire coming down on the wagons and the soldiers, you just... saw how devastating it
Well,
is.
and when you hear the history of when the first Targaryens came over and how they started, like how Harrenhal went down, like
the Field of Fire was the big one.
Well, I've imagined this all the times that you hear the histories in the books and stuff, and you imagine what it was like. And now I feel like I got an idea of what it was like, where they're lining up all the army, and then all of a sudden you hear this screech, and here's this dragon over there, and just blowing fire everywhere. And I thought they did a great job portraying it. I thought it was pretty.
It was actually a little bit smaller than I thought, given the previews. So the comparison is the Field of Fire, which I just mentioned, which is basically the first time the Targaryens came to Westeros. The Lannisters and maybe the Starks, I can't remember, but the largest military force ever in Westeros came together on this giant field to fight the Targaryens. And the Targaryens with 3 dragons just killed like 100,000 people or something. So seeing the previews for this season, I thought this battle right here was going to be a little larger in scale, but it was still big. And the point that you're making, how powerful the dragon is clear. And then I like that the regular arrows bounced off his chest, and stuff like that.
Well, and he was hurt. I'm curious to see how badly he was hurt, in the next episode. But he landed. I mean, maybe he was like, ouch.
He'll be fine,
But, like, I do feel like Dany needs some battle training, that you don't just land and try to take it out of Drogon right away and just be like, nah, everyone's going to leave me alone. Like, there was no reinforcements there. It was pretty risky on her part. She could have just kind of stood. I don't know. She just looked a little.
Well, she looked a little vulnerable, which I think is what gave Jaime the crazy idea to charge. And
do you buy that? Do you buy that Jaime would really go for that? Like, that seems a bit like a suicide mission.
I do, because I just re-listened to the books in preparation for the season, books 1 through 3, and there was one thing where he mentioned that he would be more than happy to go out in a blaze of glory. I think it was when they cut off his hand or something. He was thinking about fighting back. Like, he's not particularly he
doesn't want to be taken hostage. I do know that. Okay, but I guess that's my point, where I buy it if he knows I'm probably going to die doing this.
Yeah, and maybe it would have worked. I mean, if he would have killed Dany there, surely the dragon would have still killed him. Like, I think he was ready to die in that moment and was just going for the home run on the way out. And then Bronn saved the day again, presumably. And like we said, who knows if he'll be captured. I got a feeling he won't be captured. I think there'll be a little writing convenience where
it's going to channel the Blackfish.
They wash up ashore and Dany's
that
already
armor's
gone
heavy.
or something.
I mean, that's the thing that the Greyjoys, really speak about with other people, is why they don't wear armor a lot, because if you go overboard, you're going to sink.
Right. But
and Jaime's got real nice armor on there. I kept noticing that he's got some really nice armor compared to everyone else.
It would be the most disappointing death since Barristan Selmy if the beginning of next episode we're like, oh, yep, he drowned.
Did Barristan die before Stannis?
Barristan died before Stannis, but Stannis's, as much as it pissed me off, it was okay. Barristan's was like totally pointless death that didn't even show his capabilities that much. Like,
that was disappointing. So was the Blackfish. Those were both very, very disappointing. I think that Jaime and Bronn both survived, and I think they're going to both talk to Tyrion at some point.
So you think they're going to be captured?
Yeah, but more so because I see Tyrion talking to both these individuals. And so that means they would have to be captured, but yeah.
I'm going to say they're not going to be captured.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
One of us will be right.
Yep, one of us will be right. Anyways, anything more to say about this?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, all in all, good episode. I think the best of the season.
I think this episode and last week's were good.
Well, 3 episodes in a row, they had a bunch of moving chess pieces and then battles at the end. I kind of hope that's not the formula they use the rest of the season. I like when stuff happens early, too, so that you're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
But, whatever.
I wonder how long it takes for Dany to fly around, because she must have been flying with the Dothraki, so however fast they were going, but...
No, yeah, this is just another episode. We got to ignore the time travel device. It just is what it is. Like, it was hard for me to tell how close they were in relation to King's Landing, because the gold was dropped off there. So I was understanding that their supply line was part in King's Landing, and then Jaime's side was on the wrong side of the Blackwater Rush, or whatever it's called. And then, how the Dothraki got there, and blah, blah, blah. The only travel that seemed reasonable time to me was Theon getting to Dragonstone after all the bunch of shit has happened. That's the only one that made sense. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again for talking to me and watching the good episode with me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I will see you next week. We only have 3 episodes left.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
No.
Wah, wah.